let me start with a little bit of an introduction of who I am and what we're going to cover today. My name is Tyler Leonhardt. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, and I work on the PowerShell team. And today, I'm going to be getting into a little bit of what PowerShell is and how to kind of get started with that. I'm also, since I'm on the Manning channel, I should say that I'm also an author of a book, a Manning book specifically, and that is Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, the Linux and macOS edition. Another thing about me is that I am a member of the Twitch team, the Live Coders, which is a group of like, gosh, I think we're at like over 140 members at this point. And yeah, there are a bunch of coders, much like myself, who just stream on Twitch a bunch of projects that they're working on and that sort of things. So definitely check that out. I've got my official Live Coders jersey on. If you can see this, there's the logo. You'll actually see it pop up behind me in a bit. Learn PowerShell in the Month of Lunches, Linux and macOS edition, and there it is. It's currently in the Manning Early Access program, so the book isn't quite finished yet, but the Early Access program by Manning is really cool. It lets you kind of read the book as it's being written, and they release a bunch of chapters every so often as time goes on, and so you kind of get the I don't know, I think you get to be a part of like the experience of getting the book out there. There is a 40% off coupon for everyone. Perfect timing, right in the chat, and you can use that discount code, and yeah, use that if you don't end up winning a raffle today or whatnot. For this stream, and also I don't know how long it'll be open, but Manning has unlocked the chapters that I'm going to cover. So that's going to be chapters 2 and 3 of the book. Correct me if I'm wrong, Manning folks, but I believe you could just look inside and it should just be you should be able to see the chapters 2 and 3. So what is PowerShell? PowerShell is a shell and scripting language. Some other examples of shells that you might have heard of are Bash, Fish, CMD on Windows, and PowerShell is another one of those. It's a shell, and I think it's important to differentiate a couple of really common terms that you see in this space. There's like shell, and then there's console, and then there's terminal, and you know what the difference is between those. And it says here there's a little bit of a formatting issue here, but typically a shell is an executable that runs inside of a terminal, and in the for this, terminal and console are kind of the same thing. We'll be using those interchangeably, but I'll mostly be using just the word terminal. So a shell is run inside of a terminal. So an example of a terminal, for example, would be like there's like the new Windows terminal, which is only Windows as the name implies, but other things are like terminal.app on macOS, or iTerm2 on macOS, GNOME terminal. These are terminal applications that can run just about any shell that you would like inside of them. And PowerShell is one of those shells. So, depending on if you're following along with me, there's PowerShell on macOS, and then there's also PowerShell on Linux. Since I'm an author of Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, the Linux and macOS edition, those are the platforms that we're going to be focusing on today. But if you are on Windows, there are also steps on how to get that. So, yeah, the first chapter here, or chapter 2, I should say, just runs through the installation steps. If you're on macOS, you can get PowerShell via homebrew cask. So it's just a matter of just running brew cask install PowerShell. I'm not going to run that because I already have it on my machine, but you can go ahead and fetch it that way. So this is just very basic steps on how to get started. If you don't have homebrew on macOS, I would highly recommend looking it up. It's a package manager for macOS, and it's really, really nice for getting all sorts of different applications. And that's just at brew.sh there. So go get that and go install PowerShell. And then on the Linux side, there are some steps for Ubuntu 18.04, which will probably be updated when the book comes out. We'll try to keep to be as up to date as possible, but in this instance, we're just going to install PowerShell via the snap. If you're not familiar with Snap, it's another package manager by Canonical. It's what Canonical's been pushing as an alternative to like apt or these other ones, and you can just snap install that as well. And for the wide range of other Linux distributions out there, I highly recommend hopping over to PowerShell's GitHub repo, which is just github.com/PowerShell/PowerShell. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find a section called Get PowerShell. And then that has all the supported platforms and instructions on how to get that. There are tons of options out there, including things like Docker and some community developed ones, or community maintained one like Arch and Kali, and stuff like that. So whatever kind of operating system you use, we typically cover it. This is personally, and I know I'm kind of biased, but I think this is a pretty wide range of supported platforms, especially considering PowerShell's history, if you are aware of it. All right. So whatever platform you're on, go ahead and go fetch the latest version of PowerShell. The latest version of PowerShell is PowerShell 7 as of right now. There actually is a PowerShell preview version of 7.1 out there, but the latest stable is 7. And it's got, surprise, surprise, the latest version of PowerShell is the best one yet, so you should go and get it. But yeah, so basically, the rest of this section is just installation steps. And the other thing that you'll want to get as you get more and more familiar with writing PowerShell scripts and things of that nature is the PowerShell extension for Visual Studio Code. For what we're doing today, we're not going to do a whole lot of like actually writing of scripts. We're mostly going to be working interactively at a terminal with PowerShell running in it. But for the future, I highly recommend taking a look at Visual Studio Code and the PowerShell extension that you can install for it, because that is like, as myself, a maintainer of this extension, this is the recommended way for working with PowerShell and writing PowerShell scripts. If you know any history about PowerShell, you'll maybe recall the PowerShell ISE, and that is not supported in PowerShell Core and newer versions of PowerShell, PowerShell 7 as well. So the PowerShell extension for Visual Studio Code is the way to go. Visual Studio Code is not the same as Visual Studio, just for clarity. It's like a more lightweight text editor by Microsoft as well. And yeah, you can get it at code.visualstudio.com or from, some other package manager that you use. There's a snap for it. It's available on Brew, I'm sure. And the PowerShell extension is pretty easy to install from there. I'll go ahead and show an instance of VS Code here. I've got a custom theme here because I like to customize stuff. But yeah, you just like head on over to the extension marketplace icon here and search for PowerShell. And I know I'm kind of like going fast here, but this is all stuff that you can easily find by going through this chapter or just like a little bit of searching. So yeah, there are two versions. There's PowerShell and PowerShell Preview. The PowerShell Preview extension is like what's to come in the PowerShell extension. So that's got a few additional like fixes and features that haven't made it to the like mainstream extension yet. So if you feel like you want to live on the edge a little bit, I recommend the PowerShell Preview. I would certainly appreciate that. Big Onion Cooking, Tyler, that green screen is working great. Thank you so much. I had a friend give me one of her like lights that I have that I'm looking at right now, and that's helped so much with this green screen. So PowerShell 7, Visual Studio Code, the PowerShell extension. That is basically your awesome like PowerShell setup. Personally, and we don't need to get into the terminal war here, but for me on macOS, I really enjoy using iTerm 2. I don't think that's called out in the book here, just because customization doesn't necessarily need to be all a part of the book, but yeah, just search for iTerm 2 and you'll find it. The best thing that I love about iTerm 2 is that you can set up a hotkey to show and hide it, so I can just like bring in a terminal at any time and get started. So anyway, so once you got all that stuff, and I believe this is, yeah, so we talked about installing PowerShell and we talked about installing VS Code. VS Code is Visual Studio Code for short, and the PowerShell extension. There is some stuff that you can do with customizing Visual Studio Code in the PowerShell extension. I'm going to skip over this because we're not going to look at Visual Studio Code much today, but you have this available to you in the chapter, and I would encourage you to go through that. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff to customize in Visual Studio Code. Like, yeah, you see I've got this nice, like, I don't know, pinkish theme that I quite like. Yeah, and then what's really nice about this this format of books, Manning does a whole bunch of Learn X in a Month of Lunches, right? And this one in particular is no different in that each chapter is supposed to be done kind of like in your lunch break. And so then by the end of the month, you will have finished the book. That's kind of the general premise of this, right? So at the end of each chapter, there's a lab section. And in this one, there's not really a whole lot of a lab because it's really just like making sure you're all installed and ready to go. But each chapter has a lab section, and that will, challenge you to with stuff that you would learn in that chapter, that sort of thing. So Nightclub asks, is debugger supported in VS Code? Can I step into lines and darken? Thank you with the answer. Yes, debugging is supported in Visual Studio Code, and it's great. The VS Code team has done a great job. Also, I missed this. It's a Winter said, yes, I love PowerShell. It is great. I'm so glad that you do. Thanks for coming to the stream. All right. So that was chapter 2. I know we went pretty fast through it, but it's really just a bunch of installation steps. And hopefully by me talking, you've already gone and gotten the latest version of PowerShell, whatever platform you're on, PowerShell 7, because that's what we will be working with. With this, we'll go ahead and hop on over to the help system, to chapter 3. And I don't think I mentioned this, but one of the things that I should have mentioned, I mentioned my name and I mentioned what I do, but also I should tell you how to find me in the future. You can find me on Twitter and on Twitch and on GitHub as at Tyler Leonhardt. So my first and last name put together. So on Twitch, give me a follow. Twitter, give me a follow as well. And on GitHub, you can see what I'm up to. So that way it makes it nice and easy for all of you. And I think, yeah, because I think I used to have that on my stream here, but I don't. I've hidden some elements that are normally on my stream. All right, so chapter 3, using the help system. Now here's where things get interesting. Yeah, spelling is hard. Thank you, Codephobia. Tyler Leonhardt. That's it. Ah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yep, my Twitter and Twitch links are below. All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of this stream, which is the help system. So I always find it very interesting being someone who works on the PowerShell team. And I like go out there and I'll see what people's like biggest gripes with PowerShell are. And I've heard some folks say that it's not a very discoverable shell, discoverable language. And I'm always kind of shocked that people feel that way, because I actually find it to be one of the most discoverable languages out there. And a lot of that has to do with the help system that I'm about to show off. So for those of you who are familiar with like Linux and that environment, you typically use a command called man to see the man pages for a particular command, right? So as an example, I know I am in PowerShell here. In fact, just to prove it to you, I'll start PowerShell with no profile. I actually run a like daily build of PowerShell just because I'm wanting to beta test our own stuff. But whatever version of PowerShell you have is totally fine. But on Linux, there's a man command. And so I can actually type man and then, I don't know, what's a good one? Cat. There should be, yeah. And this is going to tell me everything about this command in Linux. And it's actually quite good. But PowerShell has its own kind of concept for PowerShell commands. And that comes in a few different flavors. Let's see what Darkin says. My 2 cents, the discoverable angle is not to do with discoverable, but to do with familiarity. Right. Exactly. Typically, people just don't know about how to discover commands and how to use PowerShell. And that's why I wanted to focus this stream on the help system, because this chapter alone gives you a solid foundation for learning just about anything in PowerShell. Because once you know how to get help, then you're golden from there. All right. So let's go through this chapter really quick. I'm just gonna kind of skim it because, you know, it wouldn't be really fun if I just sat here and was just like reading the text. But I want to highlight a couple things. All right. So, updatable help. So in PowerShell, the man equivalent is a command. That's called get help. And it looks like this, get help. Right? This is a command that you can run within PowerShell. And in fact, what this will do is this will give me help on any particular command that I want to get help on. So, for example, and I think this is a pretty meta example, I'm going to call get help, and I'm going to put get help next to it. And what this is going to give me is the information much like we saw on the man page, but it's going to give me the information on this particular command that I can run here. So it gives me the synopsis, which says displays information about PowerShell commands and concepts, and a bunch of different syntaxes for it. And don't worry about the syntaxes right now, but it just gives you a sense for how you can use this particular command. So I probably should start by talking about what a command is and kind of the anatomy of what one looks like. So we saw that I could call getHelp, and I could pass in getHelp as a parameter to this command, right? But what is that actually doing? So each command, as you could see based on the syntax here. Let's look at this one really quick. It looks like a pretty complicated diagram here, but once you kind of understand how to read this, it makes sense. So each command has a certain syntax to it. A command can have multiple different parameters that you pass into a command that changes its behavior. So in this case, I called getHelp, and I passed in getHelp as the first parameter. I could pass in something else, like, I don't know, something else, like get command is another command in PowerShell, and that will give me the results based on get command. So parameters, as you can see here, can be passed in like this, where you just like pass this parameter in right next to the original command that you're running, or you can name the parameter. And so this is what we're gonna see. Or let me go back up to the getHelp example up here. Yeah, this first part. Ignore the rest. Just look at this part right here. So it says getHelp, and then in brackets we have -name, and then we have string here. So what this is saying, the brackets are things that are optional. But in this case, we have a -name here. And what does that mean? So another way that we can write our original getHelp command, getHelp, this command, is that we can say what it is. Oh, you know what? Let me go back to my, yeah, there we go. This is my custom prompt that will help us see what I'm trying to type here. There we go. All right. So now I just ran getHelp -name getHelp, and we got the same result. And that's because the -name here is optional. You can specify it if you'd like, but you don't necessarily have to. And so there's a lot more to this getHelp command, and we're going to look at that in a little bit. But this particular parameter -name supports the ability to do a whole bunch of different things. For example, let's say that I like, gosh, I'm trying to remember a particular command, but I don't remember exactly what the name of it is. And I think that it starts with like, it has the word command in the name, but I don't remember what the first part of it is. So if I use a star here, I'll actually get the result in a nice little list here of the commands that have the word command in them, or that meet this this particular description here. And the star basically says, listen, it's what's called a wildcard, and it just says like, listen, I know that there could be anything before this text, so just give me the results based on that. And you see I've got a whole bunch of different commands here. And from there I can say, okay, I really wanted to look at measure command. So now I can go ahead and look at measure command. And again, you'll notice that this time I won't specify the name since that's optional. And so that's how I would get that. So that's just, there are so many ways to discover things in PowerShell, but that is a very strong way to do that. I'll just check chat really quick. Right, thank you, Aspen Forrester, for answering some questions here. Yes, there are tons of about topics, and that's a great way. That's a great idea. So if I just do about here, and I'll do star, I'll see all the different about topics that I have. And these are just less about helping on getting help on particular commands and more of just like general concepts. So like, for example, let's see, what's a good one? Let's see. Variables. That's a good one. Get help about variables. Variables. There we go. And this gives you just a ton of docs on variables. And also something that I should call out is you'll notice that like when I run this, I just get like a bunch of text, and that's because I'm using get help here. But there's also another command that's just help. And if I run help with the same about variables, now it has pages to it. So now I can like scroll much more easily, and that's because it uses the less executable under the hood. So it's a little bit easier to see help and that sort of things. So yes, fantastic call out there, Aspen Forrester. About topics are definitely your friend, and it's very easy to find them. Just run get help and then about star like that. And there's tons. Let's see what else. Also, we're gonna stick to talking about get help for the time being. When you first install PowerShell, you might be seeing some different things than I am, and the reason why is because the help documentation doesn't usually ship with PowerShell. You have to update the help in order to get the latest documentation. In order to do that, you run a command called update help. I know. Didn't think it was going to be that, did you? And I guess I can go ahead and run this. I don't think really anything has changed, but and you might get a couple different errors here, but this error is just saying that these particular modules didn't have any help associated with them. So that's totally fine. But by running this, it'll try to update as many things as it possibly can, so you'll get the latest help. But yes, don't be afraid if you happen to see some red text. It did work for the ones that it could find. So that's updating help. I want to go back to the get help and talk about a couple of other parameters that you can specify when getting extra details. So let's go back to the get help for measure command. And we see that it's like measure the time it takes to run script blocks and commandlets. It gives us the syntax, a nice description, but I think we're looking for something more. We're looking for examples. And if you look in the remarks, there's a section that says to see the examples, type get help measure command examples. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me check the chat really quick. So question, does the book include an explanation of the philosophy behind PowerShell? Just wondering for someone who's used to other shells like Bash or Z shell, what does PowerShell bring to the table? No need to answer here, was just wondering. That's a good question. I'm pretty sure the book does cover this because it is a very critical like part of PowerShell, and Dargon has answered it quite well in as short as possible, which is objects versus strings. And if I have time, I'll try to get into that. But I believe that's covered in like chapter 8 of the book. The gist there is that rather than commands outputting strings, raw text, they actually output objects. And the reason why, and if I've already scared you, don't just tune me out for a quick second. And the reason why is because PowerShell is built on top of .NET and has access to all of the .NET objects right at the shell. But don't worry about that if you don't know what I'm talking about. We're focusing on getting help at the moment. So, examples. And so when I run get help with that -examples parameter, now we see I can get some examples here about how this works. So, yeah, so here's like a few different examples that we have to use here. Yes, don't forget to email for a random chance of getting my book. Yes, definitely include your Twitch username in the email and put Twitch in the subject. Don't forget to do that. In the future, the raffle will be a little bit easier, but since this is the first time we're going with this. But do enter free stuff and such. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of other kinds of additional parameters that we can specify here. I guess, you know, for what it's worth, the parameter order doesn't really matter. So I could put examples here and then put measure command. It doesn't matter which way I go. But one thing that I do like is there's an online option. And this is actually going to open up my browser and bring you right to the documentation on docs.microsoft.com for that particular command if it exists. Naturally, for like random modules that you bring into PowerShell, they might not have the same documentation space, but any built-in commands for PowerShell, you'll have nice documentation on those. And you could see just the references here on the left side. There's just a ton of commands that you can use. So I should also mention a quick way to type really quickly in PowerShell, and that's the power of the tab button, or the tab button on your keyboard. It's just like if you hit tab just about anywhere, you'll get some sort of tab completion. So in this case, I hit tab next to get help here, and it says I have 1,477 possibilities, and that's basically, I'll hit yes, sure, why not? These are like all of the commands and all of the about topics. It's all very like discoverable. So remember I used about before. I hit about, hit tab, 121 opportunities here. Maybe I'll hit P. What else? Yeah, W, S, H. And I'm just like typing a character, hitting tab, typing a character, hitting tab. That works with like command names. So I'll hit get-h, hit tab, and see the options there. All right, so help, hit dash. This is one of the best ones. Is you hit dash, which is the start of a parameter, and then you hit tab a couple times, and you'll see all the parameter options. So we know about name, it's optional. And even at the parameter value level, so right here, if I do like measure, that works too. And then hit dash again, and I get my options here. And I could see like full documentation. Yeah, just tab is just the absolute best. Full specifying the dash full parameter on get help is cool because it gives you parameter information as well, each of these. And I remember I mentioned that PowerShell is all based on objects, and you could see here that we have a parameter name, and then this is the type that you pass into it. So script block in this case, PS object in this case. But if you're not too familiar with objects as a concept, then don't worry about that. You don't necessarily need to know them at this stage. All right, let's see what we got here. Yes, as random as humans can be. Not sure how we seed. Yeah, good question. But Stalking Clown, congratulations on your free copy of my book, Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, the Linux and macOS edition. And Tangerine Monkey says, PowerShell is so cool. Nice. I'm glad you like it. Put a lot of work into it. It's been a few years. All right, so I 100% encourage you to play around with Get Help some more and play around with Tab and that sort of thing. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about another amazing command for discovering what you can do with PowerShell. And that command is a command called get command. And this might surprise you, but get command will give you a list of commands. It will get commands for you in a nice big long list. Yeah, tons of them. And so knowing what we've learned by using get help, we know that we can use tab for just about anything. So let's go ahead and we'll try to see what parameters are available. So we hit dash, and I'll hit tab a couple times. Let's see what we have here. So we have name, verb, noun. Actually, why don't we do this? Let's call get help on get command like we did before. And let's see what it can do. Name, get command. Synapses, gets all commands. Syntax. So we're familiar with this part, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we can do. And there's also this. So you see that there's like this block, and then there's also this block. These are what are called parameter sets. It means you can either go down this path by specifying a name, or you can go down this path by specifying a noun or a verb. So let's maybe go into that. So actually, this is a fantastic transition to talk about PowerShell's Noun-Verb Semantics. So you might notice that like all the commands that I've used so far have been, there's like a verb at the beginning, get, measure, update, and then a noun at the end. Command, help. I think those were the other ones that we worked on. But you see in my list of commands here, we have like test, AZ resource group deployment, stop process, stop job, stop computer, that sort of thing, right? Verb noun. This is what PowerShell is fundamentally based on. There are a whole bunch of different verbs that you can choose. And and a whole bunch of different nouns, or rather, and also a bunch of nouns. That's how every single PowerShell command should look like. Get command. And the reason why we do this is for discoverability. So in PowerShell, there's actually a short list of verbs that you can actually use. And if you ever want to know what kind of verbs that you can use in PowerShell, there's a command for that. And believe it or not, it's called get verb. And this will give you all of the possible verbs when you're going, when you're out in the wild and you're like trying to create your own commands. But that's also a nice thing to reference, because a lot of them are like, a lot of them pair up. There's a get and there's also a set. There's a convert from and convert to. There's things of that nature. So by using just a small set of verbs, it allows PowerShell to be a little bit more discoverable, because you can kind of guess what the verb is going to be. So if I'm on my machine here and I know I want to look up all the operations that have the verb, what would be good? Publish is a verb. Let's go with that. There won't be too many of them, but we'll do get command, and I'm going to pass in verb and do publish. Oops, sorry. Publish, but spelled correctly. And so here you can see that I have, what is that? Seven different commands that have the verb publish. Also, if I'm like, I know I want to do an operation on a particular noun. So Azure has commands for interacting with VMs. So get command noun AZVM. And just like that, I can see the operations that I can do on Azure VMs. Great question, Tangerine Monkey. So Tangerine Monkey asks, why do I see less functions than you do typing the same command? And the reason why you see that is because I have installed other modules into PowerShell, which give me more commands. And I'll leave you at this. I want to install a module, and in this case, the one that these Azure VM commands come from is called the AZ module. And if I wanted to install the AZ module, what do you think the command would be to install it? Let's see, noun. Let's see what let's do this. Get command. We see that when I ran get command with a verb of publish, there's a publish module. So then if my noun is module, what can I do with that? And then we can see that there's a whole bunch of different options. There's find module, install module. There we go. So first I want to find the module to make sure. Make sure it's the right one. So let me do find module. And this probably takes a name here. Yeah, so we'll just do find module AZ. cool. There's an AZ module, and then I can like just run install module AZ, and that will install it. Of course, I already have it installed, but yes, that will go ahead and do that. And all those modules, just not to go off on a big tangent here, but all those modules come from the PowerShell gallery, PowerShellGallery.com. And I've got a dark theme for it, but from here you can just search for them. You could search for a whole bunch of different things. There's, you know, whatever you want. There's tons of options. So that's how you go and get other things. Right, so git command, install module. What else can we do with this? So we know we can do install module here. Yeah, cool. Oh, there's another one that's dash module. So if I want to look inside this a particular module to see what commands it exposes, I'll hit tab here, and that'll show me all of my different modules that I have installed here. And so let's look at PowerShell get, and we see there's a whole bunch of them. And this is actually where install module comes from. So another very like powerful way of discovering what you can do in PowerShell. So let's see, what else can we do with git command? Verb noun module name. This is kind of nice if you, rather than using get help, let's go back to our measure command example. When I run it with measure command, you can see what their source is coming from. So that's like the module, what version of the module it is. And you can even say, give me the syntax, and that'll give you that syntax, just as we saw in the other example, in the get help example. Right. Measure. Right. Same syntax. So that's a nice way to just quickly see the syntax instead of having to dig through the help documentation. Another super critical command. Okay, what am I missing here? Yep, install module. You got it. Very nice. Yep. Don't forget to sign up for random chance at my book. Can I write CGI scripts with PowerShell? Can you elaborate on what CGI means? I know multiple CGI as a 3-letter acronym. Darkon, thank you so much for joining the stream. CGI in the web programming sense. I'm not sure. In the web programming sense. A common gateway interface. I'm not sure, actually. It's a good question. In times like that, I typically, will just search for the answer online. And, there's tons of Stack Overflow questions on PowerShell these days. Yeah, give it a search. See if you find something. I'm curious. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about, and I know we're at 5. I don't know when this is supposed to end. If this is supposed to end, or if I'm supposed to just go on forever. But I hope you're having a good time. Now, I'm gonna get into a little bit more of an advanced topic here. Going back to my mention of objects. A forever stream. Yep. So PowerShell likes to pass objects around. So when we're actually running get command here, measure command, right? We see a bunch of text on the screen, right? we see a bunch of text. However, behind the scenes, what's actually being emitted there is an object. And the way you can see that is by running, by piping the output of this get command into another command. And that command is called getMember. So that little pipe there will take the results of the first command and then throw it over to the next one. And when I do that, we could see the type of the object that that came out of the previous command. And in this case, it's system.management.automation.command-line-info. That's the name of the type. And also, we can see there's a bunch of different properties on it, a couple methods, mostly default methods, but basically all the details that we care about that particular object. Now, I know I'm getting into kind of a more advanced topic about objects, and I encourage you to take a look at my book and read through it if you are not quite familiar with this concept. But yeah, objects are covered in chapter 8. But yeah, so let's do a few more look at this. So there's a command called getProcess. When I run it, I get a bunch of processes that are on my machine. This is equivalent to like PS on, or I think there's more. It's a little bit more, it ends up covering a whole bunch of other processes as well. But PS and getProcess are very similar. In fact, although getProcess feels like it's much longer than just typing PS, there's actually what's called an alias, which is GPS. GPS does the same thing as getProcess. It's just a different name for it. And I encourage you to try to find the command that will get you all of the aliases. Go ahead, try to find it. Tell me what the command is. Megby asks, is PowerShell case sensitive? No, it is not case sensitive. It is case insensitive. And in fact, whoa, what happened tonight? That was weird. My headphones just kind of messed up a bit. But all lowercase works. getProcess works. Tab completion also works. Like, let's say I was there's a command called getContent, and what it'll do is if you pass in a path. So let me do a path here. Code PowerShell. If I hit tab, it's going to capitalize the things correctly, since if I'm on a case-sensitive file system, like on Linux. macOS isn't case sensitive, but yes, I'm going to continue to hit tab here to go through my directory. misc foo.ps1. Yeah. Anyway. So back to my, let me go back up in history here. Back to my getProcess example. Let's take a look at what getProcess emits. So we'll do getProcess pipe to getMember. And we scroll up to the top here, we see that the type name is system.diagnostic.process, and that actually is a .NET type as a part of .NET. And you see that it has tons of different methods, right? Or properties. Yeah, and I'm gonna get into some more advanced topics here, but let me go ahead and set a variable here. So my process equals get process and then okay, let's do this. I'm gonna open up another instance of PowerShell here, and I'm gonna, it's very small here, but I'm gonna run $PID, and that's gonna give me the process ID for this instance of PowerShell. So let me just pull out this tab. I promise this is all gonna make sense in a second. Just give me 1 second. Okay, where is it? I've messed up something. Okay, there we go. How am I gonna do this? Give me this one too. Pull this out. Okay, there we go. All right, and then this, yeah, this, cool. All right, we've got this one on the right hand side, right? And we know that we want to get the process ID of 83767, yeah? And run that. We didn't see any output, and that's because the output is in this variable, my process, right? So now we can take that and we can pipe that into getMember again and see the same results that we had before. And there happens to be a kill method on this. So let me do my process, but kill. And RIP, PowerShell process. RIP. Yeah, the font wasn't important on the right one. I just wanted to show how you could interact with that process. Let me take a look at the chat here. Yep, GPDoc answers PowerShell isn't, but the underline.net is. So there are some instances where you encounter cases that do. Yes, that's a good way to put it. Tangerine Monkey says, does everything on PowerShell revolve around get command? No, not really. This stream was focused on how to discover more things that you can do in PowerShell, like really, really foundational stuff. And from here, by knowing get command, get help, and get member, those three commands, you can learn just about anything else in PowerShell. Yeah, it's all about discovering. Yep. Discoverability. Can you bump the font on the right? Oh yeah, yep. So we have commands, verbs, processes, how big the list is. Well, get command, noun. Apparently there are 558 nouns that I have available for me. Yeah. But that's also because I did install a bunch of things. So, Nightclub, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it. And yeah, big shout out for Manning for setting this up. I'm really happy to be a part of this. All right. Well, I think we're I don't know how long the Manning folks wanted me to keep going here, but I think we're starting to wind down with the three main takeaways that I wanted to focus on was get help, get command, and get member. So let me go ahead and so since you have access to chapter 3, this is going to also tell you all about the help system as well. Yep. Tons of different things that you can do. Understanding help, yada yada yada. Lots of stuff. Lots of good stuff in here. About topics, we covered that on the stream. And yeah. So what else? Yeah, the idea is that in PowerShell, there are only a select number of verbs, and that's for discoverability. But you can have any noun that you want. We talked about online help. Yeah, so I mean, you all have access to this chapter, so you can go ahead and do the labs if you'd like. There's tons of them, and yeah, we talked about aliases. Those are great point here. Talked about aliases, which are they're just nicknames for different commands. Increase the size here. Oop. There we go. Yes, last round. If you wanted to get the different aliases, you can just run get alias, and that will give you all the aliases that you can call. But yeah, so I think I'll start to wind down here. This is like a very foundational part of learning PowerShell. I think I'll close by saying why this is useful, why PowerShell is useful in general, which would definitely be covered in Chapter 1 when that's written. But as time goes on, so briefly, let me talk about the history. So PowerShell, for those of you who don't know, is a shell that used to be Windows only, and it used to ship as a part of Windows, and still does today, an older version of PowerShell. And that was built on top of the old .NET framework, which was Windows only. And folks in the IT space, system administrators and those kinds of things, those were the types of folks that used PowerShell for doing all sorts of different things, from managing managing SharePoint stuff and SQL instances, Exchange servers, things that pretty hardcore stuff, and they still do that today. But as time goes on, we see Microsoft embracing and trying to lead the cloud movement, cloud provider, and we see a lot of stuff popping up that's becoming cross-platform, working on not only Windows but also Linux and macOS. And so when this kind of culture started to shift, it made sense for there to be at last a scripting language, a shell, that worked not only on Windows but also on every platform, Linux, macOS, and Windows. And that's what PowerShell is trying to be, that layer above the operating system. And there's really I can't really think of many other shells that do that. And Bash on Windows is not really Bash on Windows. It's Bash within a container, within a Linux container that's in Windows. So PowerShell kind of sets itself apart as being an actually truly cross-platform shell, and this becomes very useful in things like continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines, like in Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions, AppVer, these kinds of services out there. Hey, Susan. Time to start dinner. Nice job, Tyler. Very cool to get a glimpse of PowerShell. Great. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate that. Actually, PowerShell is available in just about every CI system these days. Azure DevOps or Azure Pipelines, GitHub Actions, AppVer. I believe it's also available in Travis. And that's not only on Windows, but also on macOS and Linux. PowerShell is available there, which means that PowerShell is a fantastic scripting language for writing a script that you want to run as a part of your like build, for example, of your, I don't know, your app or whatever, that'll work on every platform. So you don't necessarily need to have your bash script and a PowerShell script, or bash and CMD script. You can just write a PowerShell script, and that's where we're seeing a lot of people, where a lot of people go. Are like, we've seen a lot of growth on Linux, especially in containers, since we ship Docker containers for PowerShell, and just like a whole bunch of really cool use cases popping up. All right, I'm gonna start signing off here. Thank you so much for being a part of the first like Manning on Twitch takeover. Just get caught up in the chat here. Yep. Before everyone escapes, use the discount code TWITLEON40 for 40% off any Manning property. And might I suggest my book? I'm a bit biased though, but there's so many good things on Manning. I have a tiny question. To write a complicated PowerShell script, is there an IDE that has something similar to IntelliSense? Yes. We covered this a little bit earlier on in the stream, but you want to look at Visual Studio Code at code.visualstudio.com, and there's a PowerShell extension for it. So it's not Visual Studio, it's Visual Studio Code. It's a much simpler, lighter weight text editor, and there's a PowerShell extension for it, and it works cross-platform, which is why we love Visual Studio Code. So yeah, but all right, so I'm gonna start signing off. My name is Tyler Leonhardt. Find me on the socials. I'm on Twitter. I have my own Twitch stream that I do pretty much every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah, if you enjoy this, feel free to let me know if there is something that you wish you could have seen more of, or if there's a particular topic in mind that you'd like me to do in the future. Let me know. Let Manning know as well. I'm not sure if there's anything in particular they want as like where to give feedback, but I'm sure you could also email that same email address, cagi@manning.com, for giving feedback on how we've done so far. So, okay, well, wherever you are, I'm about to go and have some dinner maybe, but wherever you are, thank you so much for joining. I hope this was informative. I hope you learned something. Oh yeah, twitch@manning.com. Fantastic. Yes, email that for things. Oh yeah, one final raffle winner. Go ahead. And yeah, follow Manning's channel here, and you can also turn on notifications so you can see when the next authors come on. Also, take a look at their page. They have a whole like, say Manning. What is it called? Yeah, free content.manning.com/Manning on Twitch calendar live author appearances. And this is going to be really weird because I'm going to be able to see myself. All right, I'm going to hit pause on that. But yeah, so here are the other authors that are coming up. Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Chrissy. Chrissy's awesome. She's also a member of the PowerShell community. All right. Arcalio1, congrats on winning a raffle. MVM Vasquez 8QV5, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, click on the schedule below as well. Can you stream in HD? Good question. I think the Manning channel has to like hit partner in order to be able to do that. I might be wrong. I'm not sure, but yes. Take a look at the calendar below. Thank you so much for all the praise. I really appreciate it, Aspen and Megby. And I will see you on the next episode of Twitch. Actually, not the next episode. Sorry, I'm used to saying that on my own channel. But yes, I'll see you on my channel if you'd like, or take a look at the other authors that are coming up. They're going to be great as well. Big shout out to Manning for setting all this up. I had a blast, and I hope you did too. Have a fantastic rest of your evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are in your day. And more importantly, stay safe, wash your hands, and I will see you all on the flip side. Goodbye.